Three little boys vanished in 1981, but 30 years later, one field reveals the unthinkable truth. It started like any other Texas afternoon, kids laughing, sprinklers hissing, sunlight glinting off a red Cadillac, but by nightfall, three identical triplet boys were gone, vanished without a trace. Their mother never stopped searching, clinging to a single photograph and a memory that refused to fade. For 30 years, the case stayed cold, buried under silence, until one discovery: a forgotten field, a buried secret, and a car that shouldn't exist blew everything open. What happened to the Marlo triplets, who kept the truth hidden for decades? And why does that red Cadillac keep appearing again and again in places it shouldn't? This is the story of a mystery that never died and a mother who refused to let go. It was a golden Texas afternoon in 1981, the kind that smelled of sunshine, dust, and family. In a quiet border town just outside Laredo, life moved slow. Children rode their bikes down cracked sidewalks. Mothers shared stories over backyard fences, and fathers grilled burgers on weekends. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and nothing bad ever really happened. Until that one day. The day the laughter stopped. That afternoon, the Rodriguez family was celebrating their son's 8th birthday. Colorful balloons danced lazily in the warm air. Paper plates sagged under bowls of chips, and the sound of kids shouting filled the yard. Among the crowd stood a woman named Evie Marlo, her hands clasped tightly, her eyes calm yet haunted. She was 60 now, graceful and kind, but her heart carried a sorrow so deep it had never left her. 30 years earlier, she had lost her world, her three identical triplet boys. In a single afternoon, the triplets were only 5 when they vanished. Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel, three little faces that once filled her home with endless noise and love. One moment they were playing in the front yard. The next, they were gone. The police searched for weeks. Helicopters circled. Neighbors combed through fields. But not a single trace was ever found. It became one of Texas's most haunting missing children cold cases, and for decades, their disappearance remained a mystery buried beneath time. Now, at the Rodriguez party, as the chatter carried through the air, something strange happened. A man walked into the yard holding the hand of a small boy no older than 8. "Sorry we're late," he called out with a friendly smile. "Had a little trouble getting ready." The boy laughed, wriggling free, and ran toward the group of kids. But as he darted past, Evie's heart froze. The boy was wearing green checkered overalls with bright yellow straps, the exact same outfit her triplets had worn the morning they disappeared. She blinked hard. No, it couldn't be. But the pattern, the shade, even the shirt underneath it was identical. Her chest tightened. Without thinking, she stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Where did you get those clothes?" The boy turned, startled, his curls bouncing, eyes wide like a deer in headlights. He bolted toward his father, shouting, "Daddy, that lady scared me." The father's smile vanished. He hurried over, placing a protective arm around his son. "Ma'am, what's this about?" he asked, confusion edging his voice. "Why did you grab my boy?" Evie's lips parted, but no sound came out. She could only stare at the clothes, at the ghost of a memory she couldn't let go. Her husband, Walter, rushed to her side, his hand gently resting on her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said softly. She didn't mean to startle anyone, but when he saw the boy's outfit, his words faltered. His breath caught. "Those overalls," he whispered. "Our sons had the same ones." The yard fell silent. Conversation stopped. Neighbors looked on, uneasy. The boy's father blinked, trying to understand. "Sir, I'm really sorry. I didn't know. I bought these at a store months ago, maybe at a thrift shop. I can't even remember where." Evie's voice shook as she stepped closer. Please, may I see the tag? I just need to know. Walter gently stopped her. Sweetheart, that's enough. He's not our boy, please. His voice cracked, old pain surfacing. Let's not scare anyone else. The man nodded politely, pulling his son closer. It's okay. We just moved here, he said quietly. Didn't mean to cause trouble. Walter managed a faint smile. You didn't. Thank you for understanding. With that, he led his trembling wife away from the party. Their footsteps slow and heavy under the Texas sun. Back home, the silence felt too loud. Walter made her tea, setting the cup gently in her hands. I didn't mean to frighten that little boy, she whispered. It was just those clothes. Walter nodded. I know. You had a panic attack. Anyone would have reacted the same, but she shook her head. It's been 30 years, Walter. 30 years, and I still see them everywhere. Her voice cracked with a kind of grief that never ages. They'd be grown now. Men, maybe with children of their own. He reached for her hand, squeezing it. You're not foolish, Evie. You're their mother, and you'll always see them. Her gaze drifted toward the attic ladder. I want to see their photos again, she said quietly. Walter hesitated. We haven't opened that box in 20 years. Please, she said. Maybe if I see them again, I can finally rest. He sighed and nodded, disappearing upstairs. Moments later, he returned with a dust-covered box, the corners soft from age. Inside lay the fragile pieces of a stolen past, small baseball gloves. 3 worn teddy bears, tiny drawings covered in gold stars. Together, they lifted out a leather photo album, its cover cracked and faded. As Walter opened it, the years seemed to collapse in an instant. 3 identical newborns swaddled in striped blankets. 3 toddlers chasing bubbles. 3 smiling faces blowing out birthday candles together. Each page shimmered with life until they reached the photo. The one from the day everything changed. There they were, Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel, standing shoulder to shoulder in front of their white house, wearing those same green overalls with yellow straps. The morning sun lit their faces with pure joy. It was the last picture ever taken of them. Evie's hands trembled. This was just hours before they disappeared, she said softly. Her eyes scanned every inch of the photo. The fabric, the shadows, the smiles. Then something caught her eye, a reflection of metal in the corner of the frame. Walter, look at that. Isn't that Mr. Howard's Cadillac? Walter leaned in. Behind the boys, half hidden by the fence, was the gleam of a deep cherry-red Cadillac. His expression changed. You're right, he murmured. That was his car. Our old school teacher's. The boys adored him. Evie frowned. But wait, he'd already moved away by then, hadn't he? Walter hesitated, unsure. You're right, he said slowly. He told everyone he was leaving the week before. They exchanged a long, uneasy look. A quiet dread began to rise between them. Evie's pulse quickened. Then why is his car in this picture? If he'd moved away, what was he doing here the morning they vanished? Walter's brow furrowed. Maybe it's a coincidence, he whispered, though his voice wavered. Maybe the police already checked it back then. But as Evie's eyes lingered on that tiny reflection in the photo, a thought she'd buried for 30 years began to surface, one she could no longer ignore. What if that car wasn't just passing by? What if it had been there for a reason? The kettle hissed again in the background, but neither of them moved. The photo lay open between them like a wound that refused to heal. And somewhere deep inside, a small, terrifying feeling began to bloom. A feeling that after all these years, the truth might have been right there, hidden in plain sight as they stepped into the sunlit room. The smell of paint, paper, and fresh-cut wood filled the air. The walls were covered with children's artwork, splashes of color, tiny fingerprints, and crooked shapes only a child's imagination could create. Near the back, a man was busy arranging supplies. He looked up when they entered. He was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, with thick black curls and light skin. His smile spread wide across his face, a little too wide, and for a split second, something about that smile tugged at Evie's memory. "Ferdinand," the young guide called out. "These are friends of Mr. Fielding. They came to visit." The man wiped his hands on a towel and walked toward them, offering a firm handshake. "I'm Ferdinand," he said brightly. "I'm the activities coordinator here." "Nice to meet you both." "Walter and Evie Marlo," Walter replied, shaking his hand. "We go way back with Howard." Ferdinand smiled again, that same glowing grin. "Oh, that's wonderful. Howard's like family to me. I've been here since I was 6 years old. He took me in when I had nowhere else to go." His tone was cheerful, but his words landed heavily. Evie glanced at Walter. 6 years old. That was the same age her triplets were when they vanished. She tried to shake the thought off as Ferdinand walked around, explaining the displays. "I'm setting up some demos," he said. "Sponsors and local partners are visiting this week, and it's important they see how our kids engage with the space. Mr. Fielding believes hands-on learning changes lives." "He's right, of course." Evie's gaze drifted to the walls, bright rainbows, paper flowers, collages made of bark and leaves. Every piece carried the wild innocence of childhood. But one drawing stood out. It was more detailed, more careful than the rest. A bright red Cadillac made of tiny grains of colored rice. Every edge sharp, every color perfect. It looked too precise for a child's hand. "That Cadillac," she whispered softly. That was Mr. Howard's car. His pride and joy. Ferdinand followed her eyes and nodded proudly. "He still has it," he said. "Actually, he drove it this morning for the event." Then, pointing at the art piece, he added with a light laugh, "That one's mine. I made it to show the kids how to use texture in their work. They get inspired when I join them." But Evie didn't smile. The moment felt heavy. Her chest tightened as she looked at him again. The curls, the smile, even the way his hands moved when he spoke. Something about him pulled her back through time. Ferdinand caught her staring. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he asked gently. "Yes," she said quickly, forcing a smile. "The crafts just remind me of my boys when they were little." But inside, her heart had started to race. Memories were rising like ghosts from water. Her son's laughter, their drawings on the fridge, the way Lucas always used to stand with that same tilt in his smile. She couldn't unsee it now. The resemblance was haunting. After a pause, she asked softly, "Do you have any siblings, Ferdinand?" Walter shot her a warning glance. "Evie." Ferdinand chuckled lightly. "Actually, I do. My brother's at the fair right now with Mr. Fielding. They're running the booth together." He checked his watch. "You should stop by later. There's an auction and a kid's performance. Always a good time." They thanked him and walked out. But as the sunlight hit her face, Evie's fingers trembled. She fumbled with her seatbelt in the car, her mind spinning with pieces that didn't quite fit. The curls, the smile, the timing. She could still see him in her mind, every detail. Walter started the engine. "The auction site's about 20 minutes away," he said, glancing at his phone. "Do we go?" "Absolutely," Evie replied firmly. Her tone left no room for doubt. "I need to speak with Howard." As they drove down the dusty country road, fields stretched endlessly on both sides. The air shimmered in the afternoon sun, and the silence inside the car felt thick. Finally, Walter asked, "Why did you ask if he had siblings?" Evie kept her eyes on the horizon. "I don't know," she said quietly. "When I saw that Cadillac drawing, and him, it felt like seeing Lucas again. His face, his hair, even the way he smiled." Walter sighed. "Evie, It's been 30 years. You can't let grief play tricks on you. I know, she whispered, her voice trembling. But what if it's not grief this time? What if it's memory? They reached the county fairgrounds, a blur of colors, laughter, and noise. Children ran between booths, ribbons fluttered in the breeze, and the smell of roasted corn filled the air. It was a picture of life, bright and busy, but Evie's heart beat faster with every step. Walter checked the schedule board. The auction already ended, he said. They wandered through the crowd until Evie froze. A white tent stood at the far end of the field. A blue banner stretched across the top. Howard's Haven for Hope. Her breath hitched. Standing outside the tent was a man with silver hair, animatedly talking to a couple. Even from a distance, she knew that face. That's him, she whispered. Howard Fielding. They waited until the couple left, then walked over. Mr. Fielding, Walter said gently. The man turned, polite but uncertain. Yes, can I help you? You might not remember us, Evie said. I'm Evelyn Marlo. This is my husband, Walter. Our sons Lucas, Noah, and Gabriel were your students at Oak Ridge Elementary. Howard blinked, searching his memory. Then, slowly, his face softened. The Marlos, he said warmly. Of course. 3 little boys, always together like ducklings. How could I forget? Evie smiled faintly, but her eyes were sharp. We heard you left town right after they disappeared. Everyone said you moved away. Howard shook his head. No, I stayed in Texas. I went into agriculture and child development. Built this place to help kids heal. He gestured proudly at the tent. This was my dream. Her next question came quietly. Do you remember the exact date you left town? Was it before or after my boys went missing? His answer came too fast. Before, he said. Definitely before. Otherwise, the police would have contacted me. Evie studied him carefully. Strange, she said softly. Because this photo says otherwise. She reached into her purse and pulled out the faded picture from that morning. Her boys in their matching overalls, smiling in front of their house. This was taken an hour before they disappeared, she said. That's your car, isn't it? Parked across the street. Howard's face hardened. The warmth vanished. He stared at the picture, his jaw tight. I don't remember, he said finally. That Cadillac could belong to anyone. He handed the photo back, voice steady but cold. Walter nodded politely, but Evie noticed the tension in his face. Something had shifted between them, a quiet, shared suspicion. Howard checked his watch. It's almost time for the children's performance, he said smoothly. You should stay. It's lovely. They thanked him and walked off. But as they turned, Evie heard Howard's voice behind them, low, sharp, urgent. Leave immediately after the performance. Get Diego here. Now. She froze. The fairground noise faded for a second. Her pulse thundered in her ears. When she looked back, Howard was smiling again, laughing with volunteers as if nothing had happened. But the words clung to her like a chill at the small wooden stage. Children lined up, maybe 20 of them, all between 6 and 9. Their clothes homespun and bright. A cheerful folk tune began, their voices sweet and pure. But Evie wasn't watching the show. Her eyes swept the crowd. And then she saw him. A man moving quickly between the stalls, dark curls glinting under the sun. The same hair. The same build. Walter, she whispered urgently, gripping his arm. Look over there, near the vendor tents. Doesn't he look like Ferdinand? Walter followed her gaze. His eyes narrowed. Yes, he said slowly. That's almost identical. Do you think they're twins? She asked, voice trembling. Before he could answer, she was already moving, weaving through the crowd, her heartbeat hammering in her chest. They slipped behind a cotton candy stand and watched. The man approached Howard's booth, speaking fast, his gestures sharp. Then, as he turned, Evie's breath caught. The same eyes. The same smile. But not the same man. "That's him," she whispered. The brother Ferdinand mentioned Diego. Walter's voice was barely a whisper. The same smile. The same eyes. And for the first time in 30 years, Evie felt something shift, the feeling that the truth was finally close enough to touch. The next morning, Evie sat by the window, the old photograph still in her hands. The soft Texas light bled through the curtains, washing her living room in faded gold. Her eyes were swollen from another sleepless night. But there was something sharper behind them now, a spark she hadn't felt in decades. Walter watched from across the room, silent. "You really think it means something?" he asked gently. Evie nodded without looking up. That car wasn't supposed to be there. Mr. Howard moved the week before the boys disappeared. But there it is, plain as day. She placed the photo on the table, sliding it toward him. And if that's his car, then maybe he never left at all. Walter rubbed his temples, torn between disbelief and hope. "Evie, the police checked everything back then. We went through every name, every friend, every neighbor. Don't start this again." But she didn't listen. She reached for her phone and began dialing a number she hadn't called in years. The Laredo County Sheriff's Office. When a young detective answered, she hesitated for a moment, her voice trembling. "My name is Evie Marlo," she said softly. 30 years ago, my 3 sons, the Marlo triplets, went missing. I think I found something." The room fell still as she explained the photo, the reflection, and the red Cadillac that shouldn't have been there. The detective listened patiently, then sighed. "Mrs. Marlo, that case was closed decades ago. But if you believe there's something new, you can bring it in. We'll take another look." That afternoon, Walter drove her into town. The sheriff's building hadn't changed much. Same gray walls, same smell of coffee and dust. But the people inside were new, young, and unfamiliar. They handed the photograph to Detective Ramos, a calm man in his 30s with kind eyes. He studied it carefully, then looked up. "You're right. The car is clearly visible. We still have the original case files. Maybe we can cross-check." Evie's heart pounded. "Do you still have records on Mr. Howard?" Ramos flipped through the database. John Howard, former elementary school teacher. Moved out of state in August 1981. No criminal record. He paused, scrolling further. "Wait, this is strange." The official moving documents are dated 3 weeks after the disappearance. Evie's breath caught. "After?" "Yes," he said, frowning. "According to this, he sold his house in late August, but your boys vanished in early August." Walter leaned forward. "So he was still in town." Ramos nodded slowly, at least for a little while. They sat in silence for a moment. Then the detective stood. "Let me pull his old address, see if we can track anything down. You said this photo was taken outside your home." Evie nodded. "That morning, just before they vanished." Ramos tapped his pen thoughtfully. "Sometimes the smallest details can reopen a case. I'll be in touch, Mrs. Marlo." That night, Evie couldn't sleep. The house creaked softly, the clock ticking through the hours. Her mind replayed the morning of the disappearance over and over. The smell of pancakes. The boys' laughter, the way Gabriel had refused to wear shoes. And then, something new surfaced, a sound she hadn't thought of in years. She remembered hearing tires on gravel. Not close, but distant, just beyond the fence line. At the time, she thought it was nothing. But now, that sound carried weight. By morning, she was waiting by the phone. 2 days later, it rang. "Mrs. Marlo, this is Detective Ramos." Her heart thudded. "Did you find something?" He hesitated. "We checked Mr. Howard's old property records. You're not going to believe this, but the lot he owned behind your neighborhood, the one near the river, is still empty. But last night, construction crews found something while digging the foundation." Evie froze. "What did they find?" "Children's shoes," Ramos said quietly. 3 pairs, buried deep near the roots of an old oak tree. Her body went cold. Walter's hand gripped hers, but she barely felt it. Ramos continued. "They're being sent for testing. The soil preserved them unusually well. We'll know more soon." The call ended, but the silence that followed was louder than any scream. Evie stood in the middle of the room, shaking. "It can't be," she whispered. "After all this time." Walter swallowed hard. "Maybe now we'll finally know." But days passed, then weeks, and the updates never came. Each time she called, the response was the same. Still under review, still testing, still waiting, until one evening, Ramos called again. His voice was softer this time, cautious. "Mrs. Marlo, we got the results. The DNA from the shoes. It's inconclusive, too degraded to match." Evie's hand trembled. "So it's not them." He paused. "We can't say for sure, but the shoe sizes. They're consistent with children around 5 years old. Around your son's age." Walter closed his eyes. Evie felt the tears she'd been holding back for decades finally break free. Ramos continued gently. "There's more. We tried locating Mr. Howard's records, employment, retirement, forwarding address. But there's no trace of him after 1983. It's like he just vanished." Evie whispered, "Just like my boys." That night, rain fell for the first time in months. Evie sat by the window again, staring into the storm. Lightning flickered across the dark Texas sky, and in the reflection of the glass, she saw the faint outline of 3 small faces smiling back at her faces. She would never stop searching for Dot in her heart. She knew what the police couldn't prove. Someone out there knew the truth. And maybe, just maybe, that truth had been buried for 30 years, waiting to be unearthed by a mother who never stopped looking as thunder rolled through the distance. Evie whispered into the silence. "Lucas, Noah, Gabriel. If you can hear me, I'm still here. I'll always be here." And though the house remained quiet, a faint creak echoed through the hallway. Soft, slow, almost like the footsteps of children running just out of sight. The case of the missing Marlo triplets remains open to this day. No arrests were ever made. No bodies were found. And the red Cadillac that appeared in the final photograph has never been located. But for Evie, hope is not something you find, it's something you hold. Even when the world tells you to let go, because sometimes the truth doesn't vanish. It just waits in old photographs, in forgotten memories, in the silence that fills an empty home. And maybe, one day, the truth will surface.